Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Lucas from No Code Buffs, and in today's tutorial, I want to take a look at how we can use JSON mode on our AI API calls. Okay, so I'm going to use Perplexity as an example since my last video we worked on how to set Perplexity API in Bubble.io. But essentially, almost all the AI API calls nowadays are standardized, and so it will be a very similar process if you want to do this with OpenAI, with Claude, with Grok, and so on. Okay. So essentially, the JSON mode will allow us the model to output a specific JSON structure, right? So the AI output can vary a lot. So if you ask Perplexity, for example, to search a website 5 times, it will come up with 5 different responses, right? And if we set up the JSON mode to always output, for example, company name, company URL, and company description, we are sure that we're always going to get this JSON on our response. And so this is really important to make sure that our calls are very consistent, right? So let's take a look at the variable that we can set here to configure the JSON mode, right? So on the response body, we have this variable here called response format, which is an object. And so we need to specify the output JSON object in our API call, okay? So I'm going to use this AI agent here to ask a question and see if it can give me an example curl request that would contain this JSON, this response format variable. Okay, so let's say something like create an example curl request, a chat completion containing a JSON, a response format variable. So let's see what it generates for us. Perfect. So it generated the example request for us. Let me open this tab. I don't know if it's under my video here, but basically we have the Perplexity call and we have this variable here, response format, which essentially describes a JSON schema, right? And so this JSON schema contains will be a type object and it has different properties, right? So company revenue and net income for this example, right? And so we can configure different JSONs. We can add arrays inside and we can specify each of the variable types as well, if it should be string, number, array, etc. So we have full flexibility here to essentially control the output of our AI calls. And this is very, very important regardless of the AI provider you're using, right? So let's copy this curl example. Let's take this back to Bubble to see how we can configure this there. And so let's move here to the plugins and let's find our API connector, right? If you don't have the API connector yet, you can add here on the plugins. I've already created some API calls for Perplexity, so I'll just use this. But essentially, what you would have to do here if you're starting from scratch is to give the API name a name, and you can configure here your shared headers, right? So authorization, bearer, and then add your API key, and then content type application JSON. And set up the chat completion. I can click here on import another call and basically paste our curl example request and click import. So we will see here that we have configured our call here with our JSON schema. Okay. So let me name this chat. Chat completion JSON mode. Let's choose use as action so we can access this call inside our workflows. I can delete the headers here since we've configured shared headers here at the top. And now let's see what we need to modify on the JSON body. Okay, so here I can dynamically specify the model. Let's set this to Sonar. I can dynamically specify the user prompt, right? And so let's say user prompt here. And now I have this entire JSON schema body here, right? That I want to essentially dynamically specify this from within our workflows, right? I don't want to use this example of company revenue and net income. And so what I'll do here to initialize is I will keep the response format variable here. We don't need to change this on any API call, but from the type variable here, I'm going to copy everything here up to this last bracket, I believe. Or maybe one less. Let me double check 1 second. So the last bracket will be closing the first one. And so this one would be closing the response format, I believe. So let's copy until this one here. And then from here, we can specify dynamically our JSON schema like this. So let's add the bracket, JSON schema, and then close it. And so we can dynamically specify it here now. Okay. So let me uncheck private here, uncheck private here. Let's say for the prompt as an example. So do some research on the website nocodebuffs.com. Okay. And for the JSON schema, let me try to paste this here, right? And let's see if we can initialize this call. Perfect. So it's taking a little while, which is probably a good sign. And then we received our API response back. Okay. So if we look at the data that we've received, we have citations. So we have a bunch of YouTube videos, we have the website, we have search results. Perfect. And so it gives me a bunch of search results. And let's see where we can find our JSON. Here. So basically title, URL. No, not here. Let's see. Choices. Okay, here. So this is the JSON output that we have specified, right? So we have company, revenue, and net income. Now, what if we want to change these variables, right? So what exactly do we need to do? So let's take a look at how we can use AI to do this. So essentially, on my JSON output, I want to have the variables company name, company URL, and I also want to have a company description. Okay. So let's say something like this. Construct, oops, construct a JSON schema with the following variables. Okay. So we have company name, company URL, and company description. Follow the example JSON schema below. Okay, and so we can copy the example JSON schema that we've received, and it will produce a full JSON schema for us. That is a type object, and it contains the properties company name, company URL, and company description. Perfect. So you can see that it added here this bracket to essentially close the JSON and make it a full JSON. But we already have these brackets here on our API call, right? So if we look back at our API, we have these brackets here already, and we just need to configure the JSON schema inside these brackets. And so what we need to do is essentially copy from the type variable again here. And then let's click it here just to initialize this call again and make sure that we have a valid JSON schema. Okay, so let me reinitialize this. And this is a good sign, right? It's processing the call and finding some information on the website that we've asked it to search. Perfect. So we've got the response back. Now, let's see how we can configure this API call here on our workflows now. So again, I'm using the same page that I've used on the previous Perplexity video. And so essentially I have a multi-line input here with the button AI web search. And here I have the Perplexity response, right? So Perplexity is my page, and I have set up here a custom state called response. So as soon as we get the response back from Perplexity, I will update the value here so we can see the response on the screen. And so let's take a look at the workflow that we can add here to this button, right? So instead of the Perplexity chat completion, what I want to do here is to find the Perplexity chat completion JSON mode, right? Now here, you can see that we have a user prompt and a JSON schema that we can configure as well, right? So for the JSON schema, I will essentially paste this, which contains all the variables that I want to receive on my JSON output. And for the user prompt, I want the user prompt to be the value on the multi-line input formatted as JSON safe. Okay. So formatted as JSON safe, we'll make sure that we add the quotes around the prompt and make sure that whatever characters we have here on the multi-line input will not influence, will essentially be properly formatted for the API to ingest these values. Okay. So finally, again, I want to set the state of the page on the custom state response to receive the results of step one. So result of step one, choices, first item, message content, right? Now, let's see if we can initialize this call now and test our JSON mode call. So let's say something like search the web for the no code buffs community. And then let's provide the website nocodebuffs.com and give me the information specified in the JSON schema, for example. Okay. So if we click here on AI website search, we should get a response here in a few seconds. And you see that we have a JSON, right? And our JSON contains company name, company URL, and company description, right? So if we ask it to search another website, search the web for, let's just provide the URL, and let's try something like openai.com. And it will come up with the same JSON structure, company name, company URL, and company description, right? And so you can see how we can get very consistent outputs. If we don't use the JSON mode, sometimes it will output more research for one company than the other company, or the response format will vary a lot if we don't specify the output JSON that we would like. Okay. So this is how to use the JSON mode with Perplexity. And again, very similar to configure this with the OpenAI calls, with Grok, for example, with Claude. It is essentially the same approach. Okay. So this concludes the end of the video. If you haven't checked out yet No Code Buffs, you can sign up at nocodebuffs.com. It is a free community where you can ask your questions about no code, AI, and you can connect with a lot of people that are on the same journey. Okay. So please leave a like on this video, leave any comments down below if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.